Thank you very much, Carmen. Please, everybody, can we give a big Rotary welcome to the two candidates who are running for Director of Clallam County Department of Community Development on part of his positions, Bruce Emery and Cherie. Ballots for the November 8th election will be mailed out to registered voters on October 19th. So the election is a few weeks away, beginning. And tonight, this morning, we'll begin with the candidates' 3-minute opening statements, followed by 1-minute follow-ups if they wish, and go to questions from our Rotary membership, online and in person here today. All questions, of course, need to be addressed to both candidates. We exhaust questions from Rotary members. We'll take questions from the guests. To raise a question, to ask a question, online or in the morning, I'll wake up here. Please just raise your hand right online too. Am I understanding? Yeah. Anyway, with that, let's go to the candidates and ask each of them to tell us, again, in a maximum of 3 minutes each, who they are and why we and our friends should vote for them. I'll hold up a note. I got my famous note here. For we have 1 minute left. We flip the coin, see which candidate goes first, and Bruce will begin. And Bruce, over to you. I'd like to have each of the candidates come up to the podium and speak.
Thank you, John. As John mentioned, I'm Bruce Emery, and I am running for the Director of the Department of Community Development. Clallam County has been my home for about 30 years now. I moved here in '92 and actually had been coming here as a child prior to that, and enjoying the salmon fishing with my father. So it's always been a place I longed to live in, and when the opportunity presented itself, I certainly took it. By way of background, I have a Bachelor of Arts in Geography with an emphasis on resource management. In 2012, I also acquired my MBA in project management. I've worked for the Department of Community Development for over 14 years as a land use planner. During that time, I assisted the Board of Commissioners and have written land use policy and regulation that has been adopted. I've worked with the Planning Commission and other civic groups and appointed community groups on land use matters, including the liaison for the Carlsberg Advisory Council when it was first formed, and the West End Region Planning Commission when we were doing the first round of updates to the Comprehensive Plan under the Growth Management Act. I've administered all levels of land use and environmental permitting at the county and fully understand how the department runs. I've also administered code enforcement, which is a challenge and pretty much a hot button issue right now. I was a recipient of the Employee Excellence in Service Award in 2006. And I've also trained and supervised planning division staff. So I have a lot of leadership credential already with the department. In 2007, I went to work in the private sector for North Point, or at the time it was Green Crow Properties, and I've been a project manager ever since. Some of my duties in there included community design and development, infrastructure design and installation. And I've also worked and coordinated with and served on over 8 boards of directors for homeowners association. So I've always had kind of a political, productive working with solutions with the people that I've worked with. Even though sometimes the issues seem to put us at odds, we always found common ground and been able to develop good, positive working relationships with those folks. I look forward to being your next Director of Community Development to solve things like our current availability and affordability of homes and manage the comprehensive plan update under the Growth Management Act. And there's a whole other variety of issues that I'd like to discuss at this time, but I'll wait for your questions. And thank you for having us today.
Perfect.
morning, Rotary. Wow, what a rowdy group that meets at 7 a.m., which reminds me why I belong to a noon service club because, wow, you guys are terrific to be here. I'm happy to be here. I'm delighted to. I have worked with your club and really appreciate your club for years. So I was here when you were working on the skateboard park. I actually contributed $2,000 when you were fundraising. I worked with you on the Dream Playground, #1, and #2, Dream Playground. So I'm past president of the Noon Kiwanis Club and past president of the Noon Seroptimus Club. So I'm running for director of community development because I am the best qualified for this particular position. I'm not running for planner. I'm running for director. That's what we need at the county. We're having a crisis of leadership in Clallam County in this director position. I served 4 years on the Port Angeles Planning Commission. I was chair of the Planning Commission, and that is land use issues, zoning issues, and those. Believe me, the planning commissions take their job very seriously. And then I was honored to serve for 12 years on the Port Angeles City Council. I'm the only woman ever elected to 3 consecutive terms. And we didn't have a hearings examiner. So we were the hearings examiner to deal with all land use issues. I helped write the comprehensive plan. So the one that's coming down that we're going to work on, I'm very familiar with that. But I've always served this community in a leadership position. That's very important because I deal with budgets and that's critical. But most importantly, I think are relationships. I have those 12 years relationships with our county commissioners because this position is a very important partner with the county commissioners. And so I have those established relationships already, and that's important. I have management. This position manages approximately 30 people. I'm going to get in there and work on code enforcement. I want to simplify some of our permitting, have pre-permitted plans for ADUs and simpler projects. I want to look at some of our building codes that I think are outdated, see if we can shorten them and make them more logical. But that's logic. I'm happy to be working for the county as your director of community development. I'll bring my leadership skills and my community skills because I'm out in the community, and that's where you learn what needs to be done is being out talking to people, and that's what I do. So I'm delighted to be here this morning. And so let's have some questions and let's get going.
All right. You have a 1-minute follow-up?
Yes, I do. And I do admire the credentials of my opponent. She has served on the Planning Commission and has served as mayor for the city of Port Angeles, and those are good things. This position is about experience, but more importantly, it's about the right experience. It's one thing to be an appointed and elected official where the information is brought to you to mull over and hopefully make the right choices. That's one part of the overall process. But this job is about researching, developing, synthesizing, and creating alternatives, and then bringing it through a public process so that those issues can be refined. Done properly, you're providing the decision makers with the best available information and the best alternatives for making sound land use policy and regulation. That's something I've actually done. I do have the right experience. I also have 15 years of managerial experience, not only in the private sector, but I've had management experience and credentials while in the department itself. So I think the management thing I have. And so I look forward to being your next DCD director.
Cherie, 1-minute follow-up?
Absolutely. This is a leadership position. This is a director position. It isn't a staff position. For full transparency, North Point Construction, Green Crow, is partially owned by one of our current Clallam County commissioners. So he works for a company that is So his relationship with the commissioners is totally different from mine. I have a relationship with the commissioners elected to elected. My experience is in leadership. This position now, we don't have a lack of planners at the Planning Commission, and one of my duties will be to hire a first deputy who's also a senior planner. We have no lack of senior planners, but we need someone who can partnership with the, I've talked with all three commissioners. They're looking for a partner. They want someone who can come to them with the plans and work on the future plans for the county. They're looking for leadership. They've asked for leadership. The people have made this elected position because they're asking for leadership.
Thank you very much. Okay, now questions from the Nor'Wester Rotary membership. And Kathy Presley will recognize who it is. Cherie, we're going to have you go first to answer the question. How do you want to?
Okay, so I'm just gonna monitor with Scott here
Okay.
as they come up. So let's start with some from with.
Who wants to raise your hand if you want to ask the question? And online. What do we have?
We got
All
Norm.
right.
As you both described, I think I maybe understand a little bit about it. This position is really a juxtaposition of working with county staff, our commissioners, and also the public that's seeking to get permits or do whatever is allowed within the county codes. Excuse me. These things can really be at odds with each other at times. I would like each of you to describe your own personal management and leadership style, and also, if you would, an example of where you have employed this to be most effective.
Sure. Well, first of all, I've talked with all three county commissioners, and again, they're looking for partnership. They're looking for someone who can lead us into the next comprehensive plan and who can run the department efficiently, so efficiently that it's not in the newspaper, that doesn't make the headlines, that you walk in and you feel like you have great customer service. I want to look at the building codes. For instance, I've been reading through the building codes. I think we need to update them. When you come in and apply for a building permit, you get a permit for 2 years and you pay a hefty permitting fee. But that is short-sighted because we haven't planned for COVID or supply shortages. So if you come back and apply for an extension up to 12 months, building code says you must pay an additional 50% of the original fee. I think that's outrageous. I don't know why. We've done the work. So I would change that and make the original fee longer, the original permitting time longer. And if you need an extension, if we have to change the dates on your paperwork, I'd like to charge an administrative fee, but not 50% of the permitting fee. I'd like to go through all the codes, see what's logic and what isn't, because the leader applies logic. And then the leader is, when we have proposed changes, like I need to, would like to add some more employees, or at least another employee to code enforcement. I have to go talk to the commissioners. Now, listen, they have the purse strings, so I have to explain to them so that they will want to fund this. That's the kind of partnership that's important. And leading the department, listen, they're without leadership. They need strong leadership. I will support them. I will create an environment of excellence in teamwork at that department. And I have done that for years. I've run my own businesses. I work for 3 Fortune 500 companies and managing people. I know how to manage people. You do it in a very positive environment. And I am a director of community development with public outreach. That isn't happening. That hasn't happened, and that needs to happen. So I want to get in there, and I want the public to know they can come, and it will be an excellent public service. And I want to update things. And how about the website? Do you know that that you can't apply for a permit online. You know that if you want to pay for a permit, you have to walk into the county and give them a paper check. I want to update the website and bring us into our technology upgraded so that it makes it better and easier for you. So I have plans and for your benefit. So I look forward to serving you as director.
Thank you for that question, Norman. Just to be clear, it sounds like your question is oriented towards what is the public process in bridging the gaps between the department, the board, and the general public. Okay. I've worked on the public process and I've seen kind of the range of what's been employed in the past. And on the two extremes are two issues that don't work, at least not in all cases. On the one hand, you develop a code and you bring it in front of the population and say, what do you think? Well, that's only one option. It's nothing for them to chew on, and they get the sense that you're shoving something down their throat. On the other extreme, you have no code and you just say, we have to solve this problem. What do you think? And in that situation, again, there's nothing for them to chew on. And they're going, I don't know. Both sources fail. You might get away with the first one if it's a real simple fix and you can explain it in 5 minutes. But generally speaking, these issues are much more complex. So what the role is in DCD is you're researching it. What does the law say? Identifying the problem. What are the parameters here? What can be done without spinning off unintended consequences? And what are the range of options that make the most sense? When you answer those questions, then you're getting ready to bring it before the Planning Commission and start opening public meetings to get the feedback. Here are the range of options we're considering. And that gives people context. That gives them the ability to understand. Part of the process is you're also educating the public. You're not leading them one way or the other. You're just saying, here's the range of things. And the beauty of this, and this gets to the philosophy portion of your question, and that's inclusion. If you're afraid of what others might say, you really have no business being here. So you get in and you listen to what folks have to say, because that also forms sort of the background that you're bringing to the Board of Commissioners. Here's what we found. Here's what we think makes the most sense. And here's what your constituents have said. And here's how we have responded to it. It's a complete package. And it makes their job relatively simple if it's done right. So that's my philosophy, and that's my understanding of the public process. And to Cherie's point about the website, that is a very important thing. Clallam County has been using the same software for permit processing for the past 20 years. I was actually working in the department under permit plan. It's not even serviced anymore. And they're actually switching over to a new program that's supposed to be implemented in February. And I have a background and training in project management. That's right up my alley. And I look forward to it. I look forward to making sure we have the parameters correct, that we've already gone through mock processes to make sure it works. There'll be bugs, but we'll work through that. And that will enable someone in Forks to submit online so they don't have to waste half a day or a full day coming to Port Angeles. And those kinds of efficiencies are the things that the development community needs in order to do their job to fill the gap in housing. And I've got a whole lot more ideas about that issue as well. So thank you for that insightful question.
Stay up there, Bruce.
Sure.
Questions again? Do we have anything from the online group?
No.
Nothing?
No.
Nothing?
Right behind you, John.
John, take it.
Clallam County is in an interesting situation with the advent of homes, people working, and the change in housing sort of parameters that are happening in the county. Other than that issue of housing, which seems to be always the one that people focus on, could you bring forward the most important issue that faces the county as far as community development, and two ways that you think you may be able to solve it through the department or encourage the solution through the department?
So forgive me, but let's refine that question just a little bit. So outside of the housing issue,
Outside of the housing issue, what are the issues that are facing the county that the community development can help solve? And 2 ways that you think it can be solved through your department?
well, the one thing that comes to mind is, is right now we have an economic differential. We have a median income, and it's tied to housing, unfortunately, but I'm going to go with this, so bear with me. The median income in Clallam County in first quarter was around $54,000. That's per family. And the median house price, of course, was then anyway, was $430,000. There's a little bit of softening of the median price at this point because of increasing interest rates. But the opportunities for improving median family income are stagnant. And one of the things that we've neglected in Clallam County is adequate industrial land base. In June of 2025, we're obligated to update our comprehensive plan under the requirements of the Growth Management Act, the State Growth Management Act. And one of the things we get to look at is, in addition to our residential zones, do we have adequate industrial land base to serve the development needs of the next 20 years? And I can honestly say to you right now, we don't. And so in there lies an opportunity. Now, that's not an easy lift. Most folks don't want expanded industrial lands next to their homes. And so we have to be very careful about how we cite them. I suspect it'll be controversial, but this job isn't easy and it requires some tough decisions. But if we do it right, we will be. The Clallam County EDC receives phone calls every week from companies that would like to locate here, companies that create family wage jobs that would help improve that median family income, hundreds of jobs, if you will, and even more if we do our job correctly. So that, I think, will go a long way to improving the quality of life for the citizens of Clallam County and help correct this economic differential between family wage jobs and median house price. Sure.
Well, yes, housing is a hot topic, and I hope we can get into that too. But we have the comprehensive plan update coming, and very wisely, every few years, we get to tweak it and see where we need to grow and how we need to grow as the county. And the director of community development is very, very key in this. So that involves a lot of community outreach. It's very important. We need to understand from our citizenry, and you need the input on how we're going to grow and where we're going to grow. We need more infrastructure. We have to focus on infrastructure. Forks is limited in their growing because you can just draw a line where their sewer goes in Forks. So that limits their growth. Swim and Clallam County we need to grow. Right now, the Clallam County commissioners are working with the PUD on getting water from a deeper well, and that can provide more water to the Swim area, Swim Valley area. That will help improve our opportunities for growth. But we need to be a business-friendly community, so we do need to look at where we can have industrial areas, because I serve on the board of the EDC, and yes, we have opportunities that companies are coming and looking for places to build and to hire. So we need to find a way to fill that need. But we have to look at where's our growth? Where are we going to have areas for multifamily growth? Where are we going to how are we going to fix our infrastructure shortage? So we have, again, working with the county commissioners, we have opportunity fund, we have this government grants, but as director of community development, I will have regular meetings with the cities of Port Angeles and so that we all understand what our need is and how we can work on it together. That's key. Relationships are key. And then as our county continues to grow, we have to manage this growth. And that's really very important. So I'll be focusing on that. I'll be focusing on working with each city and each area, but we have to find really, how are we going to manage our infrastructure? I'm going to be focused on that because we need that in Clallam County. Thank you.
Cherie, stay up.
Okay.
Yes.
So I'm dying to hear about housing. So as some of you know, I pitched an idea to the commissioners about 6 months ago to be a director of housing for Clallam County. And it's being created. I sadly couldn't wait any longer, so we'll now be at EDC instead, and I'm thrilled about that. But I've been really, yeah, what's that phrase? I've been really involved with housing. And so I'm kind of pitching to you guys to tell, so that you can tell us what your plans are to help with housing crisis.
All right.
Well, I sure need to talk to you. Yesterday, I was here at noon and our state legislator candidates, and I brought up this to the legislators that we're in such dire need for affordable housing and workforce housing. And yet, as of January, the new energy code, I spoke with 3 builders last week. The new energy code will add approximately $40,000 per each new home that's built. Well, hey, work with us here. We're having a workforce housing shortage. So they're just piling on, regulations are piling on. So what I asked for, because it's great to have your state representative right here at Joshua's, that's the time to ask. I asked for every 3 years, the International Building Code. It's like, it just gets tighter and tighter. It's like a noose that just keeps getting tighter and tighter. I've had sitting on the city council, I've had builders come and say, look, this International Building Code, it's overkill. It may work in the I-5 corridor, but it doesn't work here. And every 3 years, we have to tighten the regulation and add more thousands and thousands of dollars of cost. So I'm asking for, instead of every 3 years, can we spread out maybe every 5 years, change the rules every 5 years? Give us a break, because you come in and to build a house, at 1 year there's regulations, and your neighbor comes in and he has stricter regulations and he doesn't understand it. Well, that was last year's building code. Welcome to this year's building code. So, and Steve Theringer was saying that they want everything to go all electric. Well, that means they have to put solar on every panel and that just on every roof. And so I, as director of community development, should be a lobbyist and advocate to our legislators for housing, in addition to working in the community. So that's important. And I've been going out talking to people. I'm amazed. Anybody have any Airbnbs in their neighborhood?
Next door.
Next door, across the street, down the corner. Oh, wow. Wow. So the city of Port Angeles in the last 5 years has built 300 new homes. Not as much as they need. In the last 5 years, there are 250 Airbnbs. So the city of Port Angeles has almost no new homes in the last 5 years because of the Airbnbs. So at some point, I think we're going to have to look at areas that are dealing with Airbnbs, see how successfully they're dealing with. I think that's something. But it has to, not just the director of community development, city of Port Angeles, Clallam County, we all have to do this together, but that's something we need to look at. I want to go through our building codes and find things that are just outdated that we can make more efficient. I'd like to have for you, when you walk in the DCD, I'd like to have permit ready to go. You want to build an ADU? I have a plan for you that's pre-permitted, and here it is. if you want to build a garage, here's a already a pre-authorized permit, ready to go. If you want to build a fence or a deck, here, it's ready to go. I want to look at our smaller projects, make them fast and efficient and really cost effective. So housing, working with the county commissioners, we have the opportunity plan, we have new tax. Habitat for Humanity is just an extraordinary organization, but that doesn't address all the workforce housing. So we have pressures coming on us from regulation, and so we need to speak up and talk to our legislators about just easing off, backing off. I mean, not the regulations are a bad idea. It's just like, hey, you know, you're overwhelming us with cost at a time where it's least affordable. So we need to look at different options. Not everybody can afford a stick-built house of $450,000. How about manufacturing homes? What about tiny homes? People live in a mobile home park very, very safely, very effectively. So let's look at people having mobile homes on their private property. We have to look at alternatives now at housing and how we can safely, because what is affordable housing? For every person in this room, it's a different number. It's what you can afford. So let's look at different options for different income sources. So that's what I want to do. Thank you.
Bruce. Housing, big issue.
Housing. No problems, just solutions. Cherie's right about the energy code. I think that DCD, the Board of County Commissioners, and the cities should combine through NOLA, the North Olympic Legislative Alliance, and form a consolidated voice. It isn't that energy efficiency is a bad thing. It's a great thing. The problem is we're getting to the point where our return on investment is dismal. The energy code sets up a series of credits that you can and you achieve those credits. And right now you need at least 6 credits in order for a building permit to be approved. And it chooses from a range of different options, ductless heat pumps, various insulation strategies and so forth. But now they're getting, even solar panel is actually solar panel ready is actually becoming a requirement. Something like that, probably not a bad idea, actually. Even in Clallam County, solar panels are becoming more efficient. So that kind of makes sense. But there's other things that you would have to choose from where the return, where the actual benefit that's being generated is so small, it's not even measurable. So energy credits, carbon emission credits are traded on the open market anywhere from about $20 a ton to $80 a ton. Okay, that gives you a sense of what the open market is. It's capitalizing carbon emission, greenhouse gas emission, and so forth. So tied to that, we're paying $40,000 extra starting next year in the new energy code. And what is our return on investment? If you leave your door open in January while you take your groceries in and out of the house, you're pretty much floating away all the efficiency that you would have installed in that house for the year. So we're getting to a point where the return on investment is not worth the cost that goes into it. And that's eating away for every $1,000 that is added to the cost of a home, there's about 1,500 families who can no longer afford it. So think about that for a moment. It's an unintended consequence of this kind of white knuckle grip on make everything as efficient as possible. I say, let's make it as efficient as reasonable, and then look elsewhere to find greater efficiencies in how humanity interacts with the environment. What was one of the other things? Oh yeah, Cherie also talked about short-term rentals. We have over 1,000 Airbnbs and VRBOs alone in Clallam County. There's no question that that's consuming some of the available housing stock and possibly rental stock. So we definitely have to have a discussion on that, but we have to tread lightly. It works for a lot of people. There are retirees who have 1 or 2 short-term rentals that is seeing to their quality of life. You don't really want to pull the rug out from under it. At the same time, you don't want this thing to continue to proliferate. Otherwise, we'll be chasing our tail for a very long time trying to achieve affordable housing. Now, getting to the nuts and bolts, I had mentioned the comprehensive plan update due by 2025. Based on the growth projections provided by the Office of Financial Management, we can expand our urban growth areas to accommodate the next 20 years expected growth. And that means that we can increase urban density and provide much more opportunity. It's the margin where we solve our housing crisis. But it doesn't stop there. Part and parcel with changing the zoning is you also have to provide the urban services. You have to come up with agreements between the cities and the county so that you can have successful transfer of urban services and installation once you get that zoning in place. But once it's in place, you also have to take a look at your zoning parameters. Right now, there's the single family residence remains the sacred cow of our land use strategy. And even the American Planning Association is recommending that we rethink that and integrate duplex, fourplex, apartments, accessory dwelling units, tiny homes. These are all innovative solutions that if you integrate it across the landscape, you don't have areas devoted to let's say, apartment living, where it creates its own kind of hassle. You actually create neighborhood acceptance of these different options, and that helps promote it. And it also gives development a range of options to choose from given the economic conditions. I already mentioned raising interest rates. That makes building single family residence on spec very difficult. You put a lot of capital into a home construction project. You don't want to wait 3 or 4 years to get a return on that investment. On the other hand, if you're sitting on some cash and you've got the ability, you could build an apartment and you know you're going to fill that apartment. Now is a great time to have available land with infrastructure available. Lastly, I'll say this: if elected, we don't have a long-range planning department in Clallam County. I will have at least 2 dedicated staff devoted to long-range planning, policy development, regulation development, and part of their job will be to write grants targeted at that are currently available, and there's a lot of them, specifically for infrastructure. Clallam County would qualify for a lot of what's available. We have other jurisdictions who have full-time grant writers dedicated to this. Why isn't Clallam County grabbing some of that money to do some of these things that will actually foster new residential development to help increase the volume, to help decrease the cost, and begin to minimize that differential between median family income and the price of a new home? Let's bring back the American dream.
We have a question online.
We have a question, okay. What's the stand there? What is it? Who's
Go
it?
ahead, Steve.
Steve?
Okay, first of all, I want to thank both of you for running for office. I think this is a critical position, and it's good to have 2 very qualified candidates, so I really appreciate that. My second comment is you're going in with a staff that really has, over the last year, stepped up to the plate, and I really appreciate their attitude, their helpfulness, and their willingness to get people through projects. It's a challenge, I know it is. I do it every day. The question is going to be totally different than anything else you've been talking about. My big concern right now is how you manage code enforcement. That has been bounced around between various departments over the past few years. And when you see something like Midway Metals, that's been an eyesore for 25 years and nothing's getting done, it's a bit of a concern. And I'm sure that that's going to be one of your biggest challenges, that people come to the desk complaining about, something that's going on that is outside the existing code situation and isn't best for the community. So what's your vision for code enforcement? How would you manage it? Would it be a DCD thing, a sheriff's thing? How would the commissioners be involved? If you could give me some feedback on that, I'd appreciate it.
Code enforcement, Bruce.
Great question. Thank you for that, Steve. Yes, code enforcement is a hot button issue right now. That's one of the things I hear about probably most when I'm doorbelling. Right now, we have 1.5 dedicated staff to code enforcement. I think at this time, given the current trend and the current obstacles in their way, we need at least 2. We need that expanded. But more importantly, is code enforcement can't just be handled solely by DCD. This is an all-agency thing. Otherwise, you're playing whack-a-mole. You go out, you have a situation where there may be a failing septic system and there may be a junk vehicle. You get rid of the junk vehicle, the septic system continues to be a problem, causing an environmental health risk. You need environmental health division on board. You need the sheriff's department on board. And probably most critically, you need the prosecuting attorney's office guidance through it all. To be effective, you have to follow the right steps. You have to follow a process that protects the rights of the targeted individual. I'm not familiar enough with Midway Metals to comment directly, but it sounds to me it's kind of a quagmire, probably because there were missteps. Probably you have to make sure that when you're doing these things, you're not falling into a legal trap. And so process is important, observing rights is important, but in the end of it, you should be successful. There's no excuse not to be. On a philosophical level, code enforcement is part and parcel with equal treatment under the law. It's a constitutional right. And if we're not successful at code enforcement, we're only regulating honest people coming in and getting a permit. And that's not acceptable. So this is something that I would definitely rally behind. 2 other aspects. I saw a very successful code enforcement program 15 years ago when I was still at the county. Rich Still at the time was handling the code enforcement, and he had assembled a group of volunteers. These were retired sheriff deputies, retired police officers, and they would go out into a community. And instead of just looking solely at the land use violation or junk vehicle, they'd look at the whole thing. It's problem-oriented policing, or POP. And those folks were trained in it. And the neat thing is, you go talk to a person about a code enforcement issue, they're always going to have a whataboutism response. Well, what about my neighbor? What about that guy over there? And they're right. It's unfair if all you're doing is targeting them. So they went out into the neighborhood and dealt with all of them at once, and they would clean it up. They would, if it was a junk vehicle, they'd have a recycling guy come in, and the recycler would actually pay money for that whole vehicle. And then Rich would say, well, you got a pile of trash over there. I've got a guy who will come in and clean that up for pretty cheap. He could use the proceeds from that Hulk vehicle. And they were able, in that time, in a 5-year span, they were able to get rid of over 900 Hulk vehicles in Clallam County without one dime of taxpayer dollar being spent. That's pretty successful. And not only that, they were cleaning up neighborhoods. The broken window concept, you park a car on the side of the street and you leave it, everything's fine. You come along and you break out one of the windows, and all of a sudden the tires are gone, and then things start happening to the neighbors. So you elevate the entire community through this process, and it tends to heal itself. That, to me, should be the goal of code enforcement. One last thing. There's been some issues that I've recently heard of, and actually I was aware of back when I was in planning. We worked very hard to process permits timely. And in the case of conditional use permits, we bring it all the way up through the hearing examiner decision. He issues a decision. We've got a whole range of conditions to make sure that that development occurs appropriately for its location. And then it kind of goes away, and they're left to operate without much oversight. And there's been some problems recently that have occurred with regard to that. And I think that part of code enforcement is also the follow-up to ensure that permits are being carried out according to their conditions, according to the parameters set by the hearing examiner, which is in essence set by law. And so those are the types of things that would be a priority if I am elected DCD director. So thank you for that good question, Steve.
Cherie, and then we're going to go to closing statement.
Steve, I love your question. Thank you very much. code enforcement is a priority for me, absolutely. And unfortunately, it hasn't been a priority in the past, and that's created some of the problems we've seen in our county, including Midway Metals. I have sat down for hours with our current sheriff, Bill Benedict, talking about cooperating in code enforcement, how the DCD can work with the sheriff's office to get things done. It's going to be an effort of several, the DCD, the sheriff, environmental, but it's a priority and it hasn't been. So I have met with our code enforcement staff, 1.5 people, and they're both terrific because believe me, to do code enforcement, what are the qualifications for a code enforcement officer? Psychologist, you have to be friendly, you have to be polite, you have to know your stuff, and you have to offer solutions. We have now Midway Metals was totally unacceptable. And the reason it went on for so long was lack of action from the director of community development. That's the truth. So you have to work with the sheriff, you won't need the sheriff on every single thing, of course, but we don't have enough code enforcement officers. One of the responsibilities of the DCD is the budget. I have to present the budget for next year. I have to ask the commissioners to add staff to code enforcement. And then what's really key is I have to support that staff. I have to give them support and encouragement. When I met with our code enforcement officials, I told them day one, I'm putting the boots on, I'm going out with you. It's a big county. We're going from Nia Bay out to Swim Bay. Hey, it's a big county. I want to ride along. We have to come up with our list of priorities. And I want to see it. I want to smell it. I want to understand it. You just can't read a file and know really what the problem looks like, feels like, smells like. You have to see it. I want to go with them, and then we need to ramp up. We need code enforcement for environmental. We just need a larger department. But I will work with them because, Steve, you've seen the problem. We've all seen the problem, and why hasn't it got done? To me, it's a responsibility. Should be a priority of the director of community development, and it will be with me. Our staff has been through a lot in this last year. Steve, I'm glad to hear you compliment them. And so going in, I want to manage that staff and change the environment, make it a positive. We're a team of excellence working together, and let them know that the DCD has their back and appreciates them. That's part of management. And going in, we have to manage the staff in a very positive way. They need a good, strong, positive leader. And I'll tell you what, when I go to work, I'm going to be there 7:45 to 8 in the morning, because when the county courthouse opens at 8 a.m., you know, Steve, that counter shouldn't be dark at 8 o'clock. Hey, the lights should be on. We should be ready to serve you. But when the DC doesn't keep bankers hours, when the DCD is there at 7:45 to 8, everything's going to shine and be ready to serve. Excellence in customer service is key, but code enforcement is a priority. Again, I will have the top list. I will meet regularly every week with my code enforcement people. I will ramp up the staff, and I'm going to publicize that, hey, we had 445 code enforcement issues. We're down to 228. And but you know, there's always going to be complaints, because besides from Midway Metal, did you know we have the Hatfields and McCoys out there too, saying my neighbor did this, my neighbor did this. So it's a busy job, but code enforcement is so important. Now, Rich Still set a good example. He went in there, and I love the idea of volunteers. Do you know our police has a group of volunteers? We're community volunteers. I'd like to get a good group of volunteers for code enforcement. eyes, ears, out in the community. And then when you approach someone, you're going on their private property, okay? So so we start with two things, cooperation and education. We're the old from the government, I'm here to help. That's not always received really well. So you have to offer options and say, I've noticed you have 6 or 8 vehicles, and there's a company that'll actually pay you for them and take them away. So we have to work with people and say, well, yes, we're here to help clean up the neighborhood. And we're here to help you, because 99% you're going to get cooperation with when you ask for cooperation and educate and tell you how you're going to help the neighborhood. So we're going to work with our folks, but when we have the policies in place. I don't need any new policies. I'm just going to enforce what we have. I promise you, Steve, I'll do it. Thank you so
All
much.
right, stay up.
Okay.
We've reached our cutoff time. 2-minute closing statements. We can start with you, Cherie.
Thank you. When you get your ballot, it says Director of Community Development. It doesn't say planner, it says Director. I have the background, I have the leadership, I have the management, I have worked on our comprehensive plan, I've managed employees very successfully, and I have had the community leadership. I want to take this position to a higher level. The only time you hear from the Director of Community Development is during election time. That shouldn't be like that. I will be out in the community. I will be a force for education, for conservation. I will be in our schools. I will be working for you. I'll be working for code enforcement. I'll be working to simplify, make plans easier, and be available for you. I'll be accessible. And I have the leadership, training, ability, not 16 years working as a planner for the company of one of our county commissioners. I'm independent businesswoman. I am here to provide 16 years of community leadership. I'm stepping in because it's needed now. I'm stepping up because there's a crisis of leadership, a void of leadership. So I'm stepping in to help. This is my community service. This isn't just a job. I am the qualified leader. I'm here to help, and I will do a good job. And I'm asking for your vote as the leader, as the Director of Community Development for Clallam County. Thank you so much for having us here this morning.
Thank you, Cherie. Bruce.
I agree with my colleague. We are electing a Director of Community Development. And I have a pretty solid credential for this role. I've worked with the department for 14 years. I know how it works. I've also worked in the private sector for 15 years. I know the impact that the department has on the development community and the community at large. Knowing how it operates is 90% of the job. This is a technical job. It's not just you go do this, you go do that. It's knowing what makes the most sense. It's having the innate sense of what you need to do to prepare to present information to the public. It also means knowing where the pitfalls are. I've reviewed the digest of the Western Growth Hearings Board. I know the decisions that they've made, the bright lines in the sand, the things we can and cannot do. And in that maze, I know how to work us through to get the very best results for the future of this wonderful county. I mean, you look around a day like this, there's no question why people want to move here and live here. It's one of the last livable places in the United States. And I expect it to be that way for a very long time. And under my stewardship, it will be that way, because I recognize the need not only to accommodate growth, but to do it in a responsible way that doesn't impact our rural areas, our critical areas, our natural resource areas, such as our forest lands or our long-term agricultural lands. And I will be supportive of policies that protect those but also supportive of policies that expand opportunities for housing to help solve that crisis and expand opportunities for family wage jobs. That's why I'm asking for your vote come November 8th. And thank you for this
All
time.
right. Thank you.
Many thanks to our candidates for their time. And please, Carmen?
Thank you so much. And thank you guys for doing this. Okay, so normally we have our guests, but to be fair, to pull our raffle, to be fair. Oh, you-